Hi y'all, this is Miss Ekblad, and we are going to be talking about how pollination works. The birds and the bees. Where do baby flowers come from? Stay tuned to find out. So if you did your preview assignment, this diagram should look very familiar because you had to label it. That's what I got there. So this is the flower we are going to look at and label the parts of. The first part I'm going to talk about is the most obvious part. When you think of flowers, you think of this. It is the petals. Petals are bright, they're colorful. Their job is to attract pollinators. Petals' job is to attract pollinators. So the next part that we have are the sepals. A little less known. These look kind of like leaves. Normally this would be green right here, and the purpose that it serves is prior to the flower blooming, this covers that flower and it protects it before it is ready to bloom. The third part I'm going to talk about is the receptacle. The receptacle is this base right here that holds up the flower. Now, you may or may not have known that flowers have male and female parts. Sometimes they're both male and female, sometimes they are just one or the other. It all depends. This flower is both male and female, has both parts, but that's not always the case. So the first side we're going to talk about is the male side. The purpose of the male part of the flower is to produce pollen. The entire male part is this right here. And there's two parts of it, but the entire system is called the stamen. Kind of like how if you look at your arm and you've got your hand, you've got your wrist, you've got your forearm, you've got your bicep. You can break your arm into different parts, not literally break it, but you can, well, you could literally break it, but you can divide it into different parts, or you can just call it your arm. Similar with the stamen, the entire piece is called stamen, but it can be divided into two parts. The first part is called the anther. The anther produces pollen. That is where the pollen sits. The other part is the filament. The filament is this right here, and that's a stalk-like feature that holds up the anther. It just chills and holds up the anther. That's its main job. So what happens is, as I said, the main point of the stamen is to produce pollen. But a pollinator, such as a bee, comes into play, and the bee flies to the flower because it wants something special from the flower. Not pollen, it wants nectar. Nectar is the sweet substance it uses to make honey! Yes, do you feel like Dora the Explorer yet? I feel like Dora the Explorer. So it makes honey. But as it's going to get that nectar, it bumps up against the anther, and pollen sticks to it. So our bee friend flies off. And it flies to a new flower. You know how we know this is a new flower? Because I just told you it's a new flower. So this is a new flower, same type of flower, so it's both male and female. And so the next thing we're going to do is label the female parts. So our bee friend flies over to this flower here. And the female part of the flower is this whole structure. This whole bit is called the pistil. Now, the pistil, its job is to produce a seed. There we go. Produces a seed. So it needs to collect the pollen to fertilize the ovule, which will then produce a seed. So as the bee flies to the second flower, it gets some nectar, and it bumps up against the stigma. The stigma is this top bit right here. And the thing about the stigma is it's sticky. So when the bee bumps up against it, it separates from the pollen. The pollen gets stuck to the stigma, and the bee flies away. So now the pollen is sitting on the stigma because it was sticky and got stuck to it. And then it goes down in style. So this bit of the pistil right here is called the style, and the pollen goes down in style. It goes down in style into the ovule. So this whole structure right here is called the ovule. Whoops, my bad. It's called the ovary. I knew that. I had a slip of the tongue. So this whole structure right here is called the ovary. Inside the ovary is the ovule. I put it over here so you can read it, but that's actually in here. And so the pollen goes down the style and gets into the ovary, where it merges with the ovule. It fertilizes the ovule. And what happens is a pollen plus ovule makes a seed. So it'll happen after that ovule is fertilized. The petals will fall off and it'll swell up and make a fruit. And inside that fruit is a seed. Now the purpose of a fruit, other than to hold a seed, is it wants an animal to go, ooh, this is tasty, and eat it. And so the animal will eat that fruit, and then it'll hopefully go off far away and poop out that seed somewhere else. That way, this new seed has a nice pile of fertilizer that it's able to grow in, and that plant is able to grow in new territory. So, as a review, the bee comes flying in over here. It comes for nectar, but it bumps into the stamen, specifically the anther, which is being held up by the filaments. And then it flies away to our next flower, and it bumps into the pistil, specifically the stigma, where the pollen gets stuck to. Then the pollen goes down in style into the ovary, fertilizing the ovule, and eventually creating a seed. A couple things to remember. Do all flowers have all of these parts? Dora the Explorer answer. No, they don't. Not all flowers have all the parts. And not just because some kid came and tore off the petals. Some flowers just were born with not all the parts. A perfect flower has both the stamen and the pistil. So it's both male and female. An imperfect flower is either male or female. So it's either missing the stamen or the pistil. It's not both. A complete flower has a petal, sepal, pistil, and stamen, where an incomplete flower is missing one or more of those parts. So it could be missing petals, it could be missing the sepal, could be missing stamen, could be missing pistil. At least one of those four parts is missing, and then it's an incomplete flower. Now, can an imperfect flower be complete? No, because if it's imperfect, it's missing either the stamen or the pistil, so an imperfect flower is always incomplete. Now, can an incomplete flower be a perfect flower? Yes, because it could be missing either the petal or the sepal, but still have both the stamen and the pistil, making it a perfect flower. And that wraps up our slideshow and learning portion of this segment. Go back to the document and complete the application piece of this assignment to get credit for it. Hope you guys have a great day.